This episode of The Construction Record is brought to you by the Greater Toronto Sewer and Water Main Contractors Association. Clean water, our goal, our future.
Hello, welcome to another episode of the Construction Record Podcast. I'm Journal of Commerce Digital Media Editor Warren Frey.
And I am staff writer Russell Hixson.
And Vincent is off this week. He'll be back for the next episode. Russell and I have been doing a ton of stuff. More Russell than me. I've got stuff on the go that's not finished yet. Russell has finished a bunch of stuff. So Russell, take it away. Tell me what you got going on.
Yeah, I had a lot of interesting stories this past week or so. One is about Belle Construction. I've written about them before. Kendall Ansell is a person, she founded this construction company called Belle Construction with the idea to try and hire as many female employees as possible to not only give women in the trades and in construction management like an opportunity to work at a place, but also for clients and different people to be able to choose a more female environment, because she was running into clients who, didn't necessarily want a bunch of guys running around their house and felt more comfortable with women. So that was one thing.
But she had to go through some hoops to get that done.
Well, sort of. Like no one says you can't hire women, of course.
Right.
But she wanted to exclusively advertise positions saying we want a woman for this position, which she had to get a special exemption from the BC or from the Human Rights Tribunal. And she kind of did it. I talked to her on the phone, and she said she kind of did it on a whim, and she just didn't want to. She wanted to be able to say she at least tried.
Right.
And she was shocked to find out that they were like, yeah, totally. And she got the exemption after writing a long essay about the plight of female tradeswomen and kind of what she was trying to do and why she was trying to do it. And only 4.7% of tradespeople are women.
Yeah.
And even a chunk of them, after spending some time in the industry, don't come back.
Yeah, the Human Rights Tribunal wouldn't do it unless it was just cause, because they have to prove that there is just cause.
Kendall made her case, and so now she can exclusively advertise, we want a woman for this position, because she would advertise positions, but she'd get a lot of guys, and she said very qualified guys.
Yeah.
But she kind of has a specific thing that she's trying to do there.
Yeah, she's serving a certain venue.
Yeah. So it should be interesting to see how that goes.
Cool.
So that's one story I did. And she's also writing a book.
Oh, nice.
She actually finished it. It's a children's book. And it's I think it's called Belle and Friends Build a House. And she kind of told me, there's Bob the Builder, but is there no, version of Bob the Builder that's a girl? Because she's trying to normalize, tools and the trades and just working with your hands for young girls. And she thought, what better way to do that than to write a children's book? So, when they're young, they can see women using tools and doing things, and so it's not a weird thing to see. Let's see, what else here? Oh, yes. I talked to the City of Coquitlam. That was an interesting story.
Okay, how come?
Well, they have a new policy. It's called neighborly construction.
Okay.
And it's not really, they didn't write any new laws or regulations, but what they were running into is they're having a lot of infill construction rather than like large towers or commercial things. And so what they're finding is they're getting an influx of kind of smaller building companies who maybe haven't done projects in that city before, or who haven't worked in kind of residential neighborhoods before, and don't have the robust construction management teams that say a large contractor would have. And so they're just trying to stop problems before they happen. So they'll give them like a brochure and kind of all these materials that kind of synthesizes all of the regulations and bylaws into one place, so they don't have to go hunting and poring over these ancient dusty tomes to find this legal language and try and figure out what they can and can't do.
The Lower Mainland is a dog's breakfast of rules too, like from one location to another. So I'm assuming Coquitlam runs into that same problem.
Yeah, and a lot of it's just simple things, and they even have like a template letter to send out to all the neighbors, just letting them know these are the hours of construction that we're going to be working, this is where we're going to be parking, these are all the contact numbers if you have an issue, and just letting builders know like little things like, hey, if there's a fence near your project, take photos of it and make sure that if there's a dispute about damage or something, that you catalog that and different things. And they also hired a construction liaison officer, and their full-time job is to go around, chat with builders, and just answer any questions and let them know they're on the right track or not before there has to be a bylaw infraction or people have to issue stop work orders and stuff. Like, they don't want to do that, and that's what the Coquitlam person that I talked to said. He's like, we don't want to have to come and shut your job site down. We don't have to write you citations. We'd rather stop these problems before they're happening.
It's making their lives easier too, basically.
Yeah. So that's kind of what they're doing. I thought it was kind of a cool approach to solving that.
Okay.
And what else? Oh yeah, I just wrote about a film festival that's coming to Vancouver and Toronto. It's called the Design and Architecture Film Festival, the ADFF, and it's been running in the U.S. since 2009. They decided to come to Canada, and it's kind of interesting. I thought it was going to be kind of a real, what's the term? Kind of deep dive.
Academic kind of?
Yeah, academic and kind of not for the layman in architecture and design, but it's totally not the whole thought behind it. And the Kyle Bergman, the guy who founded it, he's an architect in New York. He kind of wants to raise the design IQ of kind of just average people, and so he tries to pick films that not only kind of dive into the architecture and design world, but also have like a really engaging human story. Like the opening film for it is called City Dreamers, and it's about 4 female architects who came up in the 1950s and 60s. One of them in Vancouver, trying to navigate this world where they're pretty much the only woman in every room in their professional life, and all the challenges that they faced. So while it talks about their work and the design world and educates the public, it also keeps their attention by having this like really fascinating human story, and that's kind of what he's hoping to do. So that's going to be running in November, and they're going to have panel discussions and Q&As and all sorts of cool stuff.
And I can actually personally recommend one of the films, because I've already seen it, called Design Canada, and it concentrates more on graphic design than it does on stuff like architecture, but it all starts with Expo 67 and how the graphic design for that and the way Expo 67 was laid out sort of sprang a whole revolution of the way stuff looked in Canada from that time onwards. To this day, if you look at a CN train, that logo came from that time. The CBC retro logo comes from then. All these different looks that Canada holds to this day are sprang from that very moment. So that movie in and of itself is worth seeing, as far as I'm concerned.
And then we had a fun little field trip last week, didn't we?
Yes, we did. We went to Solid Rock Steel in Surrey, BC. We met Peter
Steunenberg.
Thank you, Steunenberg.
It's a Dutch name.
It's a Dutch name, yeah. Who runs Solid Rock Steel, and he kind of gave us a tour and explained to us all the different sort of the struggles and challenges, and also the cool parts about working in Vancouver and concentrating on the Lower Mainland to the exclusion of a lot of other stuff, because it's his home and that's what he wants to do. So he talked about trying to find labor, which isn't always easy for anybody, but also how he worked. His family, it's a family-owned business, I think. Has
it is. Yeah.
Pretty worked on, if not all, most of the SkyTrain stations here, and a lot of the stuff that's been revamped, they've worked on.
Yeah, I think the company's almost 54 years old.
Started by his dad, who came over from Holland, and then just kind of carried on from there. So yeah, and it's interesting. It's you don't know until you go to these places just how much of this stuff is actually going on here.
Yeah, and we came on a day where they're busing in BCIT students and apprentices.
And kids too, I think, like elementary school kids, or at least
Yeah, and they're just hoping they can attract more people into the trades and to work with steel. And they have all sorts of CNC machines. They got plasma cutters and I think submerged arc welder. I think he called it.
They showed us this automatic drill that basically does all the work it used to take 4 or 5 guys to do.
You can go, you go have a coffee break while it's drilling holes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was pretty cool.
It was pretty interesting. And also you even talked about the steel tariffs and how what's that do to the Canadian and the local industry.
Yeah, well, he was telling me that he wants the company to grow more, and he called them, he said that Solid Rock is like a small to mid-sized fabricator, and they specialize in kind of custom structural steel, kind of very bespoke, small batch stuff.
Right.
and he wants to compete more on larger projects outside of the Lower Mainland in the larger province and in Canada in general. But he says doing that is very, very, very difficult when you have to compete with overseas fabricators like China and Korea. And so he was pretty disheartened when the tariffs were kind of waived on the two major LNG projects, because he said Solid Rock Steel would love to work on projects like that and grow as a company, but
what are you going to do?
What are you going to do? He just can't compete with overseas people.
So if you want to hear about that, we actually have an interview between him and Russ that we'll play for you next. And after that, we have an interview that I did at the BC Construction Roundtable about Ireland and Canada and how Brexit may or may not affect good and bad construction work between the two places and skills transfer back and forth. So without further ado, here you go.
This feature interview is brought to you by the Ontario Sewer and Water Main Construction Association, Ontario's champion for sustainable and safe water and sewer infrastructure.
I'm Peter Stoonenberg, president of Solid Rock Steel, and I also act as the general manager and chief estimator.
And today's Steel Day. Could you tell me a bit about how Solid Rock Steel got started and what they do today?
Well, today is Steel Day, which is a national day that steel fabricating shops open their doors to invite the public, and I use it as an opportunity to invite my clients to come in and just see the inner workings of a steel fabrication shop. And so it's completely voluntary, and many shops will open their doors across the country, Canada and the US. You asked about our history, how we started. Well, in 1965, my dad was a Dutch immigrant, and he took up the steel industry as a trade in Holland. And when he got to Canada, he had a large growing family, and someone suggested you should start your own business. So my dad in 1965 started his own fabrication shop, and 54 years later, almost to the month, September, we are still here, going strong, and we employ about 50 people in total. We're a union shop fabrication, and we do install our own steel as well, so we are Local 97. And then we have our office, which is detailers, estimators, project managers, admin.
What sort of products do you guys produce here?
We specialize in what I call custom structural steel. I'm not a beam and column shop like a lot of tilt-up buildings. We do custom projects, and so memorable projects are SkyTrain stations. We've been involved in almost every SkyTrain station. We've done all the West Coast Express, Canada Line stations, and our most recent largest project ever was the Metrotown SkyTrain station, where we put two huge roofs, and they did a platform extension and had some huge structural steel roofs over top. They're highly complex. They involve installation on off hours because the SkyTrain's running during the day, and also they have a 3-coat high performance paint finish on it. So we at Solid Rock like to have our hands in the detailing, the fabrication, the painting, the installation, and try to give full service and not sub out a lot of various trades. So we'll try to do the whole job for you. Yes. Mm-hmm.
What are some of the challenges a steel manufacturer in Canada faces right now?
Steel fabricators in Canada face the challenge of offshore competition. And so recently the LNG at Woodfibre got released out of the sanctions and is being sourced straight from China, which, for example, hurts the Canadian fabricators. I'm a smaller mid-sized shop, but how can I grow if I don't have the opportunities on some of these large projects? So you're hitting a little bit of a nerve on that today on Steel Day, but for example, Solid Rock Steel, we're building a new shop in the back behind our old building here and looking forward to the future, and part of that is being able to access the Canadian market. Currently, we've grown up on staying local. We stay in Vancouver, supply and install in Vancouver. Over the years, we have gone out of the province or within our province and shipped overseas. Water slides, parks, and Cultus Lake water slides. We've done a lot of structures there as well, helped them out.
I know part of the challenge in BC is there's not enough skilled trades workers. Have you had an issue? Have you been affected by kind of the labor crunch yet?
The comment or concern about skilled labor is huge. I depend on skilled labor. My fabricators and iron workers have to be highly skilled. We do custom work. And so as we're aging, I'm a great example of it, and many of our work staff on the shop floor and in the office are getting gray-haired, and it is a challenge finding new young people that want to get involved in construction or fabricating industries. So part of our strategy is we're union, so we hopefully can pull from the union pool. And events like today, we'll shortly have some BCIT students showing up to look in the shop, and so we're trying to promote ourselves as a opportunity place, and we have been focusing even on young apprentices to try to have some of the younger people get involved in our industry and show them that there's more to than just welding and fabricating and installing. There's even opportunities for office, growing in the office.
Tell me a little bit about technology and how that has changed over the years since you've been involved in the industry.
Well, let's start with cell phones. Never heard of them. Now it's ringing in my back pocket as we're talking. So we're very connected with technology, particularly in the office. Drafting. If you came to our office 20 years ago, you see drafting boards. Now, no drafting boards. All our detailing is done in AutoCAD or 3D steel programs. A fax machine. We don't even use ours anymore. The internet. So using emails. So that's the office side. In the shop, there is certainly a lot of equipment, CNC equipment. We're not big on that. I like to save my shop space for fabricating large structures. However, automated saw, we have submerged arc welding machine, we have a plasma table, all things that you did by hand years ago. And so certainly in my 40 years, I've seen a lot of change in equipment. And now even today we have a couple suppliers here, Hilti and TrueFit, showing off some of their products, the drills. I was commenting the drills. I remember putting all my weight on the handle, and now you push a button and it's automated feed. And that's simplistic, but you can get a whole robotic drill lines for beams that will cut, cope, and drill and stamp the members with mark numbers. So it's certainly come a long ways in the steel industry. One of the challenges is finding operators for that equipment, because a lot of young people go to university and have other career goals, and we just find as an industry that we need to challenge them to come into the shop and operate some of our fancier equipment that needs that type of training.
What would you say to some of these young people who are graduating high school and looking for a career? Why is the steel industry a good industry to get into?
Why is the steel industry a good industry to get into? Because it pays good money. Construction is a very good wage supplier, especially steel fabrication. And the career leads into many different areas. The skills that you learn on the job, fabricating or erecting or in the office, come in handy years later when you want to be an estimator. For example, that's how I started. I used to weld in the shop and cut steel, grind it, and then eventually took drafting, and then eventually did some estimating, and now general managing. So there's a career pathway that doesn't just lock you in to working with your hands all day. However, that's certainly a great career. We have many guys, long-term employees at Solid Rock, that have been with us 30 plus years, made a good steady income, and there will always be building happening here in Vancouver. We're in a great spot, and so I think for construction, I'll promote all construction, not just steel, but whether electrical, plumbing, carpentry. Certainly the trades offer varied opportunities for young people.
I'm at the BC Construction Roundtable with Enterprise Ireland, talking about Canada and Ireland, how they can work together, and I'll have the three people I'm talking to introduce themselves.
Malachy O'Doherty, Market Advisor with Enterprise Ireland Canada.
Stephen Samuels, Enterprise Account Executive with Go Contractor.
Andrew Williams, Business Development Manager, Kingspan.
And I guess the first thing I would ask is, you're here to Malachy, to explain how Ireland and Canada can work together, and you guys are already doing that. So maybe you could explain sort of the big picture, and then you could explain boots on the ground, how you guys do that, work Ireland and Canada meshing together.
Yeah, absolutely. So Enterprise Ireland, as I mentioned, is the trade and innovation agency of the Irish government, and we work with over 5,000 Irish companies right throughout the globe. We've a presence. Enterprise Ireland have a presence in 40 overseas offices, and what we do is we work with Irish companies to help them, first of all, to help them grow and start from early stage right through to maturity. We work then with our overseas network, our industry experts, to identify where there might be a need for Irish companies in the market, and then as a result of that, we put together a short pipeline of Irish construction companies, the likes of the guys here, Kingspan and Go Contractor, for that particular market, and then we introduce those Irish companies to companies within the market with the aim of forming a partnership. And the whole idea of forming that partnership is that there's value gained for everyone, the Irish company and in particular the company within the market that we're introducing them to.
Okay, and maybe you guys could explain what are the benefits of being an Irish company working here, and what are some of the challenges?
So the main benefit of being an Irish company working in Canada is that we have an extensive network of Irish Canadians. For me in particular, when reaching out to Irish Canadians, they're super, super helpful in getting into the company and sort of giving us that opportunity to win business. And so that's sort of been the best thing about working for an Irish company. In terms of the key challenges, the main challenge that we have in the market, Go Contractor, is challenging the status quo. Construction companies have tended to be a little slow in adoption of construction tech, and so just educating on the advantages of construction tech and streamlining the onboarding and training process is something that I would say was one of our key challenges.
Okay.
The advantages of it for Kingspan are the brand recognition and the networking that occurs between trade, the Enterprise Ireland. There's been many contacts made through Enterprise Ireland for the business. From a challenge perspective, it's just, again, the adoption of the product within the environment, getting people to see that there are other building materials out there.
Okay, and skilled labor is a real challenge in Canada for sure. And just anecdotally, I've been to a bunch of sites where the foremen are always Irish, so because they've come over. So maybe all three of you could speak to how you use skilled labor from Ireland. How does that work?
Absolutely, and you're totally right, Warren, in saying that there is a shortage in skilled labour. We had one of our Irish government ministers over here recently at a construction roundtable event in Toronto, and one of the things that came out of it was that the average age of, I think, most construction workers across Canada is 50. So in terms of, you're absolutely right, there's a huge number of Irish companies working here, Irish people working in Canadian construction companies. But one of the things that Irish companies do, which is great here in the market, it's certainly an advantage for the Canadian companies, is that a lot of them will supply the product and will fit the product. So they supply it into the market, and then they send the people over to put the product in place. So that kind of, I suppose, saves a resource in the Canadian company in terms of labour.
And in terms of skilled labor, do you guys bring labor over from Ireland, or is that a factor for you?
So that isn't really a factor for us, but in terms of the EPCMs and the GCs that we work with, we do find that most of them have a very, very large Irish population. So we can see definitely that there's been a lot of adoption in terms of bringing over skilled Irish workers.
Okay.
A lot of our customers actually employ Irish citizens.
Right, okay.
So there's been a lot of expats that have come over in the industry, but have just moved here on their own, that are actually employed back into the industry. And there have been a few Irish-based businesses that have come over and set up satellite offices here in Canada and have employed a lot of the Irish contingent within the community.
And a question for you, Malachy, would be that well, there's the elephant in the room, Brexit, but there's also CETA, so maybe you can address those two things.
Absolutely. Look, I suppose Brexit is, without question, as I said in the presentation there, it's one of the biggest challenges, I suppose, that Ireland has faced in a very long time. The Government of Ireland and Enterprise Ireland are working very hard with Irish companies to help them diversify into new markets, to help them form new partnerships in other markets. It's also important to note as well, the United Kingdom will always has been and always will remain our nearest trading partner. They're great friends of ours, but looking at new markets is something that companies have to do. There's great opportunities, I spoke about them up there, for Irish companies and for Canadian companies, especially on the supply chain side. Companies are going to need to start ensuring that they can have a reliable supply chain, and I think you mentioned there CETA. CETA's aim is to reduce 98% of tariffs on industrial goods between the European Union and Canada. So now more so than ever, there's an opportunity there for Canadian companies to start supplying into the Irish market, and also it's an opportunity. Brexit also is an opportunity for Canadian companies to set up a presence in Ireland as well. I mentioned to you there earlier the 70 Canadian companies employing over 10,000 people in the Irish economy, and some of those Canadian companies have set up operations in Ireland as a result of Brexit, so that they can ensure that they'll be able to serve the EU market post-Brexit.
Past Brexit, what's the future for Canada and Ireland working together in construction specifically?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think it's very clear from our presentation there, there's huge opportunities, and I think going forward with the introduction of CETA, with the current trade relationship we have with Canada, I think there's great opportunities for Irish and Canadian construction companies to collaborate. As I said, we work with highly innovative companies, and I mentioned that Ireland is ranked number one for innovation in Europe. So I think going forward, there are great opportunities out there. You look at the impact on the environment globally, and there's a real opportunity there to make. I suppose there's opportunities for companies to make a difference here in Canada and Ireland. There are a number of highly innovative companies on the green energy optimization side. So I think there's great opportunities for them to work in collaboration with Canadian companies to share their knowledge and to work together on construction projects over here.
Okay, great. Thanks.